So my name is David Abecassis, and I'm the technical director of Titan Bioplastics. And today we're going to be talking about how graphene oxide can benefit bioplastics in general, and in particular in the area of barriers. So it's a tool in the toolbox of working with and modifying bioplastics. Why would you want to do that? Well, it turns out most bioplastics have inferior barrier properties. They're a little more permeable than they should be. Biodegradable plastics in particular, I want to correct that statement. But for example, PLA, it's really not that great as far as holding back gases and oxygen and CO2, and this allows microbes to grow on things. So it's a big issue since most of the biodegradable bioplastics actually are designed for, a lot of them are for food packaging, and that was sort of the initial raison d'etre for the use of them because they constitute such a large amount of environmental pollution plastic. So how do we resolve this using nanotechnology? Well, nanoparticles are very small solids. They're very, very large molecules, if you want to think of them that way, but they're big enough to be sort of molecular manhole covers, if you want to think of them that way. They're solid particles with high surface aspect ratios, and they cause gases such as oxygen, water, and different kinds of organics to have much further to travel as they go through the same distance of plastic. And this increases the barrier properties and increases the utility of the packaging. So how does this look in an actual polymer? Well, here's an example of silicate nanoparticles that we've worked on. And here you can see these. This is our Titan nanofill. And it's pretty evenly dispersed. This was achieved through compounding in a twin screw extruder using a variety of steps that we currently use with thermoplastics as a general rule. But the problem that we got into as we start developing more and more circular economics around plastics is that basic, fairly unfilled commodity plastics that are used for packaging oftentimes get separated using density and water and gradients. Okay, so you've got some polypropylene, you've got some TEP, they're all mixed together. You put them together, part of the plastic starts to sink because TEP has a higher density. Obviously, PP stays at the surface, you're able to separate them that way. And because of the simplicity of water-based separation for large-scale separation of bulk plastics, this is a potentially long-term issue. So if we use silicates, we're able to get improvement in barriers. We're able to get improvements in processability. We're able to get in reprocessing. We get improvements. However, it affects the density gradient. Graphene and graphene oxide, however, do not do this, and they do not add significant density to the plastic while adding a lot of barrier. And because they're lightweight molecules, you can go in at very, very low loading rates. It's not unusual to see research with graphene oxide or graphene where it's 1 part per 1,000. So that's unusually low, and that's enabled by the fact that these are nanoparticles. So instead of micron-sized particle fillers, you've got actually 2 orders of magnitude smaller particles. So you can go in much less and get very similar properties. Now, what are these graphene and graphene oxides? Well, they are molecular structures. The graphene molecule is basically a sheet. It looks almost like chicken wire made up of benzene rings. And in the case of graphene, all these electrons that are in double bonds are instantly shared with every other carbon simultaneously in a quantum mechanic effects that results in superconductivity at room temperature. And this is the first time that human beings have been able to achieve this at room temperature. That is not a water-soluble molecule. It can also be rolled up into what are called carbon nanotubes, but with a greatly increased toxicity to human cells. And which is another reason that it's useful to use graphene oxide, which has a lower, if negligible, toxicity. Your body can eliminate it. Part of the reason for that is graphene oxide has functional groups that make it water-soluble, They're kind of like little buoys on the molecule that would normally float. This would not really go anywhere on the water. It just might through surface tension on the surface. But these little groups serve as sort of attachment spots for large amounts of water molecule that can then float this graphene oxide. But more importantly, we can do organic synthesis and use these functional groups to add them to our plastic systems. Let's take a look at graphene oxide first. This is what it looks like. It's sort of dark black or rusty. It's normally master batched into plastics at high concentration, and then the master batch concentrate plastic is dropped down into other plastics. It takes a lot of cleaning. As we say in New York, it's very schmutzy. It's very hard to handle as far as cleaning and protocols for the extruder afterwards. So it's difficult to work with, but it has a lot of value in a variety of emerging industries. Graphene oxide looks like this, very similar, sort of a reddish rust color. However, graphene oxide is water soluble. And that's very important for its handling, for its cleaning, and also for the kinds of things we can do with it, like water-based gels or water-soluble polymers. And this also makes it useful for biomedical applications. Along with its very low toxicity, it's actually used and incorporated in drug delivery for the human body. So unlike carbon nanotubes, which are highly toxic, like asbestos or other types of lethal carcinogens, graphene oxide is so safe in some forms, it's actually been suggested to introduce it as an antioxidant in beverages. But it does have a safety factor that I think is important to notice, but also a water solubility that makes it easy to handle and makes it easy to work with. Now, when we put it on a plastic, we use one of these functional groups, this oxygen in this case, to attach it chemically to a polymer. And we do this using a variety of standard organic chemistry reactions. This one is an ether bond, but we can use esters and a variety of other types of applications, diols, and things that it would normally react with to actually bond our bioplastic onto the graphene molecule. And then this makes the graphene oxide, which would normally be insoluble in the plastic, not only soluble in the plastic, but because it's attached to a large bulky polymer, that polymer is going to form a steric, exclusion zone that will cause the graphene oxide to be uniformly distributed. So that if you took a transmission electron microscope, you'd notice how uniformly distributed the graphene oxide is. And that's because the polymer that you're vectoring into, for steric reasons, is going to move it around fairly uniformly as long as you can melt the plastic well and get good compounding. Now, here's an example of that, some work that I did. Now, we're actually using this for and this is ocean waste plastic, but it could be polypropylene or biopolyethylene or other types of bioplastics. The reaction would be the same. Here, I had to activate the plastic to bond it, and that would be one of the things, but there are many plastics with functional groups. Here, we added functional groups using flame etching and then bonded the graphene oxide. Now, this pellet could be fed into normal plastic to vector in the graphene oxide. Here, however, we were trying to experiment, and we continue to experiment for its use in water purification because it kills bacteria. Now, graphene oxide, because it's water soluble, has an additional barrier, lever for bioplastics, and that is that we can put a coating with the graphene, a water-based coating with the graphene oxide on top of the plastic. And that means that if the bioplastic is too gas permeable, we can use a fairly unsophisticated, either biodegradable or non-biodegradable coating that sits on the outside of the bioplastic. And the graphene oxide is going to give that coating layer very good barrier properties and maybe some antimicrobial as well. Now, here we don't need to graft the polymer. If it's a water-based coating, the graphene simply evenly disperses through dissolution into the gel layer and distributes itself if there's good mixing and the coating's been well prepared. So here we don't have to do any synthesis. We can simply do formulating with it. Now, this is how one of the properties that's very important. It's antibacterial. Bacteria can be killed in contact with graphene oxide 2 different ways. And here I've got my happy little bacteria before it contacts the graphene oxide. Chemically, the plasma membrane is transformed from a liquid to a solid. And as a result, that kills the bacteria. That's the chemical. It oxidizes the plasma membrane and basically turns it from a liquid to a solid gel. There's also mechanical contact death, and that means that the structure of the graphene oxide, it's a sheet, can actually act like a cleaver and actually cut the bacterial cell open just like you'd cut a sausage in half. And that's a mechanical effect. So you can now use this biological antimicrobial effect, and there are a couple of advantages to it. Unlike antibiotics, bacteria cannot develop resistance to this. The mechanisms are too fundamental for it to be able to avoid being killed. And then the other thing is you can use this antimicrobial to develop a sacrificial coating on a bioplastic, in particular, let's say for a biodegradable plastic, but that you want to have a long field life for whatever you're using it for. And then at the end of that field life, you've engineered the protective coating so that it gradually wears off or dissolves off. And now at the final stage where the coating has completely disappeared, you can induce normal biodegradation. So to conclude my talk, I just want to restate that graphene oxide adds additional, very desirable properties. It also enables high-end market application bioplastics such as EMI shielding for electronics, antibacterial containers, batteries for plastics. Because of its conductive nature and its chemical resistance addition to bioplastics, it actually enables some of these plastics to be used in unusual ways, such as battery components. And also mechanical applications where a bioplastic would need more stiffness or better chemical resistance to the environment. Graphene oxide will also give it those properties as well. So my conclusion is, and it's an extremely useful complementary additive technology for bioplastics. And I'll be happy to take questions now, if there are any. And if not, I want to thank everyone today. And I look forward to the rest of the conference with you as well.